Hello and welcome back. I'm your friendly neighborhood technician. Today we are going to be doing the front wheel bearings on the 124 here. Before we get to that, I need to give a shout out and a huge thank you to my first Patreon subscriber, which is, I'm probably going to butcher this name, Ashna Hamd. So let me know if that's not correct, and I will try to pronounce it as best as I can. But first ever, I haven't been advertising it, but I did have the link in my description, or I had the link in on my Facebook or YouTube page. Sorry, I can't talk right. But I guess I'll start mentioning it from now on. So if you haven't already, hit subscribe, give me that thumbs up, and make sure you hit the notification icon so you get a notification when I get a new video. And check out my Patreon if you get a chance. It's only $5. So let's get to it. Here's the part number we're going to be using. This is the kit for the wheel bearings. You have your dust cap for the front. You have your inner seal. You have a new set screw for your rotor, your brake rotor. 2 new caliper bolts, which might be a little different, so we might use the original caliper bolts. You have this is the outer wheel bearing. This one goes towards the outside. And then there's the inner wheel bearing right there. Those part numbers, if you need them separate, that's the outer wheel bearing. That's the inner wheel bearing, which, let me get a better one on there. There's a 2 on the end of that. There we go. There's your outer wheel bearing. And there's the seal. That is the part number for the grease I'm going to be using, which is high temperature anti-friction bearing grease. This stuff is really, really green. Kind of looks like thick Mountain Dew. Yeah, so we're going to be using that. And the tool we're going to be using to measure and correct the wheel bearing play is going to be this. We're going to use a dial indicator and this clamp to get it all set up nice so we can measure the wheel bearing play. Now this one, as you can see, is measured in inches, so I am going to go ahead and use this one, which is in millimeters and inches. All right, here we are on the right front, passenger front. So first thing you're going to want to do is take off your caliper, and then we're going to take off the brake rotor. So I'm not going to take the pads out. I'm going to leave those installed because I just want to remove the whole caliper. I don't want to actually remove the brake pads, since the brake pads do have some life left on it. So I'm going to leave those attached. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to come back here. We're going to need to get this bolt out right here, and then also this bolt right here out. And that should be a 19. You can use whatever 19 you like. I like using this big old long mountain wrench. You can see right there, mountain. Doesn't need to be snap-on, Mac, or anything like that, just something that'll work. This thing has never really failed me, so I'm gonna use that. One thing you want to do is you want to secure your caliper from falling down. You could use a piece of bent hanger, or you can use a bungee cord, something like that, but you just don't want this falling down in case your rubber brake hose is not in the best condition and it just rips it right off. So just to keep that from falling down, you just want to secure it to anything you can. You can secure it to the shock, or you can secure it to the spring. Any way you can figure out how to keep it from falling. Next, you're going to want to take out the set screw for the brake rotor, which is a 5mm Allen. Then remove your rotor. Next, you're going to want to get the dust cover off. Now, it might take a bit of tapping, or it might take a little bit of prying, but if you just stick the screwdriver in there like that and you twist it, it does come out a little bit, so you kind of just want to work your way around and work each side out a little bit. Just like that. Now there's inside the old dust cover. Yummy. You can kind of see how all the green grease is out here and then all the dirty grease is in there. Next, what we need to do is we need to loosen this bolt right here for this nut right here. So the only thing holding it in place is the tightness of this bolt. So we just need to loosen that a little bit, and then we can actually turn this. And this right here, how far we turn this will adjust how much play we have in the wheel bearing. And this is another 5mm. So I suggest getting a long 5mm, because if you get one that's too short, you're going to actually be hitting the flange right here. As you can see right above it, it kind of overlaps it a tiny bit. So I suggest getting something. This one works pretty good, this ball end, because you're going to need to get it at a slight angle. You can see right there how it's kind of a slight angle. So you need to get that at a slight angle and then crack it loose. Just a little bit. And then once it's loose, you can go ahead and unthread this. Do pay attention to how it comes out. You'll see on the inside of this, it looks a lot different. You can see on the inside it has a more flat surface right there to mate up with the bearing surface. There's a better shot of the inside. Nice and clean it off, and outside with all the stampings on it, inside nice and smooth. So from there you should be able to just pull out the bearing, the outer bearing. Doesn't look too terrible. And from there, you should be able to just pull out completely on the hub and it'll just come right off. Be careful not to damage those splines right there for your ABS. And there's your hub. Well, that's not the hub, that's the shaft. So we're gonna clean all that off. Then we're gonna remove the bearings, the inner bearing, and the seal from the hub. All right, there it is, all nice and cleaned off. Now I might take a little bit of time and try to clean off all those particles from the speed sensor. Now that we got this thing in a vise, we're gonna go to town with a screwdriver. You can see right here, there's the bearing, here's the seal. We're gonna go to town with a screwdriver, pop this seal out. And once you get the seal out, now you can pull the bearing out, which is right there, all nasty and grody looking. And you can clean out all the old grease. So once you have most of the grease wiped out, you don't have to wipe off every single tiny bit of the grease. You don't need to be able to eat off it. But next, what we got to do is, if you see this little lip right there, that's the lip of the outer race. We have to get that outer race tapped out, and then we're going to flip it over and we're going to have to tap out this race, the inner race, and there's a lip on the inside edge of that as well. So that, what you're going to need is a punch. Just going to get it in there on that lip, and then we're going to hammer it out that way. Then we're going to do some on this side, some on that side, some on this side, some on that side. Or if you want to tap it around a little bit like that, you just don't want to keep tapping all in the same spot. Here's the outer race. Doesn't look too terrible. There might be some wear marks on the inside of that. That may or may not be a heat ring on the outside of that, but that's why we're replacing them, just because. All right, so this is what it looks like without the race in there. You can see this surface right here is where the race sits. This is where the dust cover sits. So when you put the new race in, you're going to press it in all the way till it sits right on this lip right there. And then you can see on the inside of there, right about here is where the lip is. for the inner race. So we're going to tap this one out, and then we're going to get to pressing new races in. Inner race doesn't look too terrible. Still has that weird dark ring around it. Okay, so installing the new bearing, or the new race, it does help a lot if you have a press. Because trying to get this in there and tapping it with a punch or something like that, you're just going to risk screwing up this bearing surface right here, and you don't want to do that. So what you're going to need if you do have a press is basically you're going to need something that is just big enough to cover this surface right here, but small enough to fit inside this, something like this right here. So the bearing is going to sit on that surface, but it still has enough, it's still small enough to fit all the way down there and press it and make it seat properly. Ooh. And there we go. New race is seated properly. Now let's press the outer race on. All right, there we go. Little note, make sure you have these installed properly. You want the thin part of the race facing outwards on both sides. Because if you don't, that bearing is not going to fit in there like that. So now what we get to do is we get to pack these bearings with grease, then we're going to pack some grease inside here, and then we're going to throw the seal on. First we're going to start with the inner bearing, then we're going to throw the seal on, then last we're going to do the outer bearing. And there's the seal on. You just want to put the seal on until it stops. You don't want to actually throw every ounce of pressure that a press has at it, because you'll destroy the seal. So you just want to put it until push it until it stops. There is a lip on the inside that will stop once the seal hits it, or you can use a socket that's big enough for this, but you want the socket to be all the way to the edge. You don't want to have a socket that's just inside, because then you'll just destroy the rubber seal. So if you have a press, use that, or on the seal a socket would be okay if you have a way to tap it in nice and evenly. So that's what it looks like when it's nice and pressed in evenly. Just going to sit right above the top edge of the inside of the hub. Now we get to throw the hub back on. Be careful not to damage the seal. It's going to fit around that lip right there. It's okay if the front bearing gets pushed out. You can always align it later. Okay, so now the proper tool, the actual Mercedes tool for this, attaches to the hub here, and then this actually will touch the very, very tip of that. So there's not really any difference between how I'm doing it by mounting it to another part of this that actually doesn't move, and then measuring the play of this versus measuring that. So what you want to do is you want to measure the play between 0.01 of a millimeter or 0.02 of a millimeter, so 100th or 200ths of a millimeter play. Right now you can kind of see that I'm moving it and it's not really moving at all. So now we get to loosen this a tiny bit, and then you'll see how much play is actually there. See that? There's your 1,000th to 2,000th play. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten that to 8 Newton meters, and that's how tight we're going to do it. You can see right there, that's where I'm measuring that from. Then we're going to put a little bit of grease in here. You don't have to, but I like to. And then we're going to tap the new dust cover on. There we go. There's the dust cap on. Now all you have to do is put your brakes back on. There's a new set screw for the rotor. Now, here is the new bolt versus the old bolt. You can see the old bolt has this little shaft on it, but the new one comes with blue Loctite on it. So I'm going to go ahead and use the new bolt. They're the exact same length and the exact same diameter. So I'm going to go ahead and use that one. By the way, the new caliper bolts are 18 millimeters. The old ones are 19. You're going to want to torque these down to 115 Newton meters. Well, that's it for today's show. Make sure you get an alignment after you do your wheel bearings, because depending on the amount of play you had before, your toe might be a little bit different. So you're going to want to get that checked before you start driving. You might get some excessive wear on your tires if you just send it and not check the alignment. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you, Ashna, for the Patreon. And as always, hit subscribe, give me that thumbs up, and hit the notification icon so you get notifications when I post a new video. Thank you very much. See you next time.